The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous.
Tonight, from the Majority Report news desk and also non-news desk and accounting, human resources division, as well as from the Majority Report cafeteria.
Hi, this is human resources.
I believe you mean the commissary.
Commissary.
Yeah, whoa.
Tonight,
I got a chance to use the word.
From Houston, Texas, the third 2020 Democratic presidential debate. It's actually the fifth. First two had two. 2 times 2 is 4. This is the fifth one. There's only one this round, but don't worry, folks. Back in October, in the future of October, going forward, October, we will have 2, probably, sadly. But tonight it's only 1. 10 people. They're on the stage already. We will try and be sparing in our commentary so you can hear what's going on. Here is George Stephanopoulos.
Night only. The top 10 candidates are here. Our Democratic primary debate starts right now.
His hair is looking great, though.
Well, it's also a Majority Report special. We're talking over it. So they're going to try and come up with the
more like. I know it's a cliche to complain that politics is treated like sports, but when it's like actually like
pro wrestling,
it's a little embarrassing.
They were all brought out earlier this evening to get like in the same way that you would like in the beginning of a football game where they all line up and they come out of the locker room and it's like,
they should all have logos that they spend.
Yeah, well, they do, right?
Well, I mean,
the
they
campaign
do,
logos, but they should wear helmets or jerseys.
Yeah,
when
they should have
right?
them on, they should have them on football helmets.
I want to see them slap each other's asses.
I want to see Joe Biden's eyes explode while he confronts
Biden does have
Warren
CTE,
on her
so
asbestos.
My understanding is,
splatter everyone with his
as far as advanced billing, Joe Biden claims that he's going to go after Elizabeth Warren on corporate work that she's done in the past. It does appear that Andrew Yang is going to do an Oprah tonight. He's going to give away $120,000 to 10 families, $1,000 a month for 12 months. I don't know if it's one of those like look under your seat at home type of situations. We're going to find out. But it is going to be his attempt to promote UBI. And let's see, who do we got here? Whole crew.
Correspondent Lindsay Davis and Jorge Ramos from our partner network, Univision.
Yeah.
Jorge?
George, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to welcome Latinos across the country and to ask about Latinx
Oh, I bet you he's going to say something in Spanish. How
Latinx
horrible.
is the big time.
How
I bet
absolutely
you he's
offensive.
going to say something awful about Venezuela. That's what I bet. That's going to be an attack. Ramos going to attack Bernie on not supporting intervention.
Bring it, Jorge.
Bring
the same treatment Trump gave you, buddy. You're not careful.
I'm telling Latinos that despite the fact that we are facing difficult times, this is our country too.
We are delighted.
Well, he had to bring politics in. He is obviously biased towards allowing Latinos to exist in America. Clearly, why interject politics into everything? Into everything.
500 people, most invited by the
A lot
Democratic
of
National
Americans
Committee,
tune in
and
to
of
watch
course, some of the
presidential
brightest
debates,
minds of the student
and they don't
body
expect it to
here
be
at
interrupted by
TSU.
politics.
Yeah, it's really rude. It's also, I like this whole thing where we get to see the personalities of the people who are asking the questions.
I wish we had about twice as many people in the audience. I feel democracy was being served.
And 45 seconds for a rebuttal or
I wish they
response
were
as directed
sitting
by
in
one
a-
of the
There's the shot
moderators.
clock right there, as you can see it. Joe Biden, as you can see, is standing without any aid whatsoever.
Hopefully we have a Joe Biden ICAM.
Already holding
Joe
on.
Biden ICAM.
Candidates are here tonight.
I watch.
The podium places based on their current standings in
Mac,
nationally
can you just
recognized,
get in touch
nationally
once?
recognized polls with the leading candidates in the center. All candidates have been told they can have 1 minute to make an opening statement, and we're going to begin in reverse
Here we
polling
go.
order with Secretary Julian Castro.
Here we go.
Sorry.
Good evening y bienvenidos a Texas. Welcome to Texas.
It's great to be here at TSU, home of the Tigers.
You know what's funny? I've heard that he really doesn't speak Spanish.
On January 20th, 2021, at 12:01 p.m., we're going to have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. There will be life after Donald Trump. But the truth is that our problems didn't start just with Donald Trump, and we won't solve them by embracing old ideas. We need a bold vision. Universal pre-K and universal health care, unleashing millions of new jobs in the clean energy economy, a tax system that rewards people who have to work for a living. But first we have to win, and that means exciting a young, diverse coalition of Americans who are ready for a bold future. That is what is known
Kennedy
as a
word strain.
It's what Carter did.
When you were trying to
it's
show
what
that
Clinton
we're
did.
Put effort
it's what
into
Barack Obama did. And it's what I can do in this race. Get back Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia, and Arizona, and finally turn Texas blue and say goodbye to Donald Trump.
Let me tell everyone what we're going to try and do here at the Majority Report.
Senator Klobuchar.
We're going to dig down
Texas
deep.
Southern.
Really make it. Oh, here we go.
I believe that what unites us up here, the 10 of us, is much stronger than what divides us.
I just told
and
my
I think
chief
that's true
speechwriter
of our
that I would
country,
literally
too. Now, I may not be the loudest person up here, but I think we've already got that in the White House. Houston, we have a problem.
Want to hear what this crazy tyrant has
We have
to
a
say.
guy there
She got there
that
first.
is literally running our country like a game show. He would rather lie than lead. I think we need something different. I am someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you, and that is how you govern as well. So you're going to hear a lot of ideas up here.
You
Some
should
will
be
be
on
great,
mic, man.
but if you see that some of them seem a little off track,
How many of the other candidates are
I've got a
scratching
better
out
way.
Houston? We have a problem
if
right
you
now.
feel stuck in the middle,
What
of
ideas
the
is she
extremes
talking
in our
about are going to be
politics, and
off
you are
track?
tired of the noise and the
Oh,
nonsense,
she's trying to sell the moderate
you've got a
thing.
home
Yes.
with me
Full
because
debt
I don't want to be
cancellation.
the president for half of America. I want to be the president for all of America.
That's great. That's not going to happen. That is not the reality.
Beto O'Rourke.
It's an honor to be on this debate stage. It is wonderful
Fucking
to be
A.
back in Texas,
Hey.
in Houston, back here at TSU.
Shut up.
On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me and I think produced a turning point for this country. The first is just how dangerous Donald Trump is, the cost and the consequence of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been a part of America was welcomed out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place, inspired to kill by our president. The second is how insufficient our politics is to meet the threat that we have right now. The bitterness, the pettiness, the smallness of the moment, the incentives to attack one another and try to make differences without distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively. That's what I want to do for you as President of the United States. Thank you.
Too confident, not into it.
Senator Cory Booker.
It was over 20 years ago that I was a law student and moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, to serve as a tenants' rights lawyer to try to address the challenges in my community.
I remember having Fiji water imported to my apartment because no way in hell I was drinking that water.
Housing, but it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, "Boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn and defiant and going to put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change." She was a church woman that said, without vision, the people will perish. Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community,
without vision,
and we
people
did things
perish?
that other people thought was impossible.
Then she said, Houston,
That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose. The differences amongst us Democrats on the stage are not as great as the urgency for us to unite as a party, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to unite America in common cause and common purpose. That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will lead this nation.
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Today, everything revolves
around
the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore.
He's feeling himself.
We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine.
Shareholders?
You mean like
when you donate money to a
UBI
presidential
machine
campaign, what
that
happens?
supplements
The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now.
Thank you.
If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
I'm going to donate that to
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
other candidates.
Sanders, yes. This is, I mean, the Jacobin just called Andrew Yang Ross Perot for millennials.
Kamala's just laughing.
It's original, I'll give you that. The American people are divided.
I remember I killed the family in
doubtful
Afghanistan
at the
once.
very moment we need to rise to some of the greatest challenges we've ever seen. As a mayor of an industrial city coming back from the brink, as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, I know what's at stake in our national leadership.
Are such nerds.
We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us. But then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than the part about us. Politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the day-to-day lives of Americans. We just marked the anniversary of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment we came together as a country. Imagine if we had been able to sustain that unity.
Also, how it felt if you were Sikh or Muslim in New York City and had to put an American flag on your car so you wouldn't get beat up.
Hey, Sam, you're talking to somebody who
presidential leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for. And that is why I'm asking for your vote.
This
Senator Kamala Harris.
I think it should be illegal to talk about unifying the country.
I plan on spending tonight talking with you about my plans to address the problems that keep you up at night. But first, I have a few words for Donald Trump.
I want the Senate because I want to divide.
So, President Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division among us, and that is why we've got nothing done. You have used hate, intimidation, fear, and over 12,000 lies as a way to distract from your failed policies and your broken promises. The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says a sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. But here's what you don't get. What you don't get is that the American people are so much better than this. And we know that the vast
I don't mean to talk over her, but I think we know what the point of this is. But from a strategic campaign perspective, she wants Donald Trump to be talking about her and tweeting about her.
She's fallen off significantly. She wants to get back.
And this will, I will be surprised if this doesn't work.
I mean, you can go back to watching Fox News.
He'll say something about it.
He will definitely say something about it. The question is, will she get the dozen tweets she wants or just the one? And it's not a bad strategy.
Senator
I'm impressed with this novel Democratic primary strategy of saying Trump is bad.
Finally. All right.
Senator Sanders.
Let me be blunt and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress or in the media.
In good shape today.
And that is, it goes without saying that we must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country. But we must do more. We must do more. We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on. Yes, we will raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Yes, we will finally make sure that every American has health care as a human right,
up front.
not a privilege. And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
This is going to be the first night that a lot of people are tuning into the debates.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
And
so I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class.
So folksy.
Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when child care nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford child care. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
The only one I think who did not mention Donald Trump.
Vice President Joe Biden.
You know, when President Kennedy announced the moonshot, he used a phrase that sticks with me my whole life. He said, we're doing it because we refuse to postpone. Well, I refuse to postpone one more minute, spending billions of dollars on curing cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find cures. I refuse to postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through high school and beyond. I refuse to postpone any longer taking on climate change and leading the world in taking on climate change. Look, this is the United States of America. There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving. There's enormous, enormous opportunities once we get rid of Donald Trump.
Woe is me. Does anyone believe him? He's going to get moving.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing, the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary debate.
Hit Warren,
both Senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
It's not a bad question.
That'll be for the voters to decide that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I think I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it?
We're already paying for half of that right now.
How that's happened. So as far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but it gets him about halfway there. There's There's a lot of other things that need to be done. I have a bold plan to deal with making sure we triple the money for at-risk schools that are Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion a year. But I go down the line, and these are the things we're talking about.
This is as fresh as he's going to be, folks.
How I can get it done and why it's better.
Smile. Did you see that?
Well, let me take that to you, particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about
this is going to be interesting because the real question is Warren going to go after Biden tonight?
But the fact
That's
that
the big
middle-class
question.
taxes are going to go up, and most of private insurance is going to be eliminated.
I don't think Bernie
will make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care in America and committed this country to health care for every human being.
Have you ever tried to buy insurance on the exchanges?
And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less. That's how this is going to work.
Direct question. You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe that the deductibles and the premiums will go down. Will middle-class taxes go up?
They won't go down. They'll go away.
Be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost. Total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for All. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work under Medicare for All in our health care system.
Senator Sanders, you were invoked by the Vice President.
Not
also
that
take on that question about taxes.
I'm not sure what her health care plan is.
Joe said that
she's selling
Medicare
the concept
for all would cost over $30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion.
That's a fucking
Every
good
study
point.
done shows that Medicare for all is the most cost-effective approach to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so.
Yes.
Swag.
Intend
I got memes.
to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need a health care system that guarantees health care to all people, as every other major country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising, telling you how bad Medicare for All is because they want to protect their profits. That is absurd.
Vice President Biden, you get a response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, et cetera. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now, they can keep it. If they don't like it, they can leave. Number one. Number two, the fact of the matter is we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. You're going to, the middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea if you like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Okay, now I want everybody to keep to the time, but you did invoke both senators. I have to get responses from them, then we will go on out.
Good.
Senator Warren, you go first.
I won't even say that my time's
let's be
up
clear.
tonight.
I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like their doctors. I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. I've met people who like their physical therapists. What they want is access to health care. And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums into insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage, we're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for All. Every health care provider is covered. And the only question here in terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
It's America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. And they guarantee health care to all
In America, we pay more for less.
When you don't pay out of pocket and you don't pay premiums, maybe you'll run into people who love their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
Senator Klobuchar, you said in your opening statement you want to represent the people stuck in the middle of the extremes. Who represents the extreme on this stage?
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking about if I could respond to some of the proposals from my friends. First of all, Senator Sanders and I have worked valiantly to bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. That was a Klobuchar-Sanders amendment to allow for drugs to come in from less expensive countries like Canada. We have worked to bring down the cost by fighting to allow 43 million seniors, that's a bill I lead, to negotiate for better prices under Medicare. I figure that's a lot of seniors, and they should be allowed to get a better price. But when it comes to our health care and when it comes to our premiums, I go with the doctor's creed, which is do no harm. And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. And on page 8 of the bill, it says that we will no longer have private insurance as we know it. And that means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years. I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea.
Who does she think
and what
she's winning
I
over
favor
with
is
this?
something that what Barack Obama wanted to do from the very beginning, and that is a public option, a nonprofit choice that will bring down the cost of insurance, cover 12 million more people, and bring down the prices for 13 million more people. That is a bold idea.
Senator Warren. Page 8 of the bill, she says 149 people will lose their health insurance.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their health insurance.
149
health insurance.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
So let's be clear about this. People will have access to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals, their rural hospitals. Doctors won't have to hire people to fill out crazy forms. They won't have to spend time on the phone arguing
it's literally
with insurance
like
companies. People
we're going to
who have
offer you
sick
gourmet
family
meals
members
every
won't
night
have
of the
to
year.
get into these battles.
And people are going like, but wait a second, what about the TV dinners? You're taking away our TV dinners.
There was a continental breakfast of a half a stale bagel at the Holiday Inn. I don't get to have the packaged jelly anymore. I think it's going to upset a lot of people.
Out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care coverage.
This is literally
the problem,
like that. This formulation
Senator
is like
that damn bill that
so you want everybody to be driving electric cars in 30 years.
It doesn't trust the American people. I trust you to choose what makes the most sense for you.
Oh, this
not
is
my way or the
classic
highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves. I trust the American people to make the right choice for them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million people on private insurance? 50 million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs or when they go unemployed or their employer changes their insurance policy. Medicare for all is comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for all is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out co-sponsoring Senator Sanders' bill. You now say you're uncomfortable with it. Why?
I want to give credit first to Barack Obama for really bringing us this far. We would not be here if he hadn't the courage, the talent, or the will to see us this far. I want to give credit to Bernie. Take credit, Bernie. You know, you do this far
I will, in
I
addition to landsliding
you.
Thank you.
But I wanted to make the plan
Not
better,
me,
which I
us.
did, which is about offering people choice, not taking that from them. So under my Medicare for All plan, people have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want. And I agree we shouldn't take choice from people. But here's the thing. Everybody on this stage, I do believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least five people have talked, some repeatedly, on this subject, and not once have we talked about Donald Trump. So let's talk about the fact that Donald Trump came into office and spent almost the entire first year of his term trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all fought against it, and then the late, great John McCain, at that moment, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, chose his attempt to take health care from millions of people in this country. Fast forward to today, and what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump's administration is trying to get rid of the ban that we placed on denying people who have pre-existing conditions coverage. Donald Trump is trying to say that our kids up to the age of 26 can no longer be on our plans. And frankly, I think this discussion has given the American public a headache. What they want to know is that they're going to have health care.
No, I think the insurance companies are giving them a headache.
On the end goal.
And
if
your
we don't
endless,
get Donald Trump out of office,
bullshit.
he's going to get rid of all of it.
George,
a headache that they cannot afford to treat.
15 seconds.
Let me get to Congressman O'Rourke and then bring you. Go ahead, Mr. Vice President.
15 seconds. Look, everybody says you want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, in a Medicare for choice.
Biden took
if you
like
want
a
Medicare, if you lose the job
tonight.
from your insurance from your employer,
Still
you
no
automatically can buy into
grandpa
this.
energy.
You don't have no
Bernie's
pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered. Period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings. The president thinks, my friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator Sanders.
1 minute, George.
Go ahead.
George, I got to take care of a bitch.
2 points.
Yep.
You got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease, cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you.
I know a lot about cancer. Not so much about not being able to pay for it.
Every
He's pointing to the wrong camera.
Can't talk about
who's diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can
pointing at the wrong
automatically
camera.
become part of this plan.
Well, good for you for being able to help your son and not worry
because of
about
that.
health insurance because
they will
of your
not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on who you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Thank you. Listen, I'm grateful that we all agree about the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump is undermining the limited protections that we have right now. But I also think we're being offered a false choice between those who propose an all-or-nothing gambit, forcing tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared for in a state like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America says everyone who's uninsured will be enrolled in Medicare. Everyone who's insufficiently insured, cannot afford it, can move over to Medicare. And those, like members of unions who fought for the health care plans that work for them and their families, are able to keep them. That is the best possible path forward.
Health care is the top issue for everyone in the country. I want to make sure everyone gets 1 minute to respond. So Secretary Castro, Andrew Yang, and then Senator Booker, you all get a minute.
Thank you. And, I also want to recognize the work that Bernie has done on this. And, of course, we owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama. Of course, I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden, and I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole time, she had Medicare. I want every single American family to have a strong Medicare plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference, because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Are you
forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
World Star.
He said, are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
That they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically enrolled.
You're forgetting, old man. You're forgetting.
Regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his health care plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My health care plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
Eyeballs are literally about to fall out of his head and roll away.
Andrew Yang.
Or how about $1,000?
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable. This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand.
This is why.
Shut up, Alfred Gentleman.
Boo.
Shut up.
And telling each other that
you're my plan, your plan. Look, we all tax credit.
Yeah, shut up, Alfred.
It's called an election. That's an election. This is what we're here for. It's an election.
We're not here to debate. Why do we have to come here and debate everything?
And that is not how we're
Look, everyone, we know we're on the same team here. We know we're on the same team. We all have a better vision for health care than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current healthcare system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as full-time employees. You instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs. It's certainly harder to start a business. The pitch we have to make to the American people is we will get the healthcare weight off of your backs and then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Senator Booker.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. And they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued.
Now, I am Jewish, so I know how to save a buck.
He might have a future of stand-up comedy.
Revenue and activity,
Bernie just starts eating Yang. Now, I am a Jew, so I know how to save a nickel. And if you look at the Makata study, you will definitely see some Jew work.
Patient health stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
Senator Booker, close out this discussion.
Thank you very much.
The business speak is pretty oppressive.
There are a lot of people watching at home right now, listening to us, that are afraid because they are in crisis. They don't have health insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough. They can't afford their prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But, dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency right now in this nation. Everybody feels it. And as a person who has an ideal, I know we cannot
ready to trade
sacrifice
Zuckerberg for the burn?
progress on the altar of purity. Because people in my community, they need help right now. They have high blood pressure right now. They have unaffordable insulin right now. And this must be a moment where we as Democrats can begin to show that we can not only stake and stand our ground, but find common ground, because we've got one shot to make Donald Trump a one-term president. And we cannot lose it.
White people have blood pressure too, just like poor black
and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am the leader, I will work towards the ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans. But every single day, I'll join with other Democrats to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Candidates, thank you. Lindsay Davis.
Thanks, George. Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to start with young black voters. Several recent polls indicate their number one concern is racism. This campus, this state, and this nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama, but each of you on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse. Congressman O'Rourke, coming to you first, why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
My family owns slaves.
You know, I called this out in no uncertain terms on August 3rd and every day since then. And I was talking about
I've been talking about this for over 2
Racism
months.
in America is endemic.
Well, month and a half.
Foundational. We can mark the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was brought to this country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy. We have to be able to answer this challenge, and it is found in our education system, where in Texas, a 5-year-old child in kindergarten is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled based on the color of their skin. In our healthcare system, where there's a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color, or the fact that there's 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America, I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill that will allow us to address this at its foundations. But we will also call out the fact that we have a white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
Secretary Castro, 45 seconds to respond.
You know, and I want to commend Beto for how well he has spoken to the passion and the frustration and the sadness after what happened in his hometown of El Paso. He's done a great job.
Beto's bracing.
Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 hours inspired by this president to kill people who look like me and people who look like my family. White supremacy is a growing threat to this country, and we have to root it out. I'm proud that I put forward a plan to disarm hate. I'm also proud that I was the first to put forward a police reform plan, because we're not going to have any more Laquan McDonald's or Eric Garners or Michael Browns.
Oh, shouts to the pregame analysis.
Right, I was going to say,
Rahm Emanuel.
That's not fair to Rahm Emanuel, who is here.
I believe that we can do that, because that doesn't represent the vast majority of Americans who do have a good heart. They also need a leader to match that, and I will be a president. that matches that.
Senator Booker, you have said, quote, the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist. It's who's going to do something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that. When racism exists, the question isn't who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from health care to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out and having a plan to do something about it. If I am president of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism is dealt with in substantive plans, from criminal justice reform to the disparities in health care to even one that we don't talk about enough, which is the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
Mayor Buttigieg, you've been struggling with issues around race in your own community. You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
Ask him about his
I believe what's deepened
record.
divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just take a racist policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generational theft of the descendants of slaves is part of why everything from housing to education to health to employment basically puts us in two different countries. I have proposed the most comprehensive vision to tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas, marshaling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas Plan that we invest right here at home to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses.
We can
investing in HBCUs that are training
tools.
and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can and must do that, but that means transcending this framework that pits us against each other, that pits a single black mother of three against a displaced auto worker. Because where I come from, a lot of times that displaced auto worker is a single black mother of three. We've got to say that and bring people together.
And her son's
also
about to be shot by one of my
Also a concern for people of color is criminal justice reform. Senator Harris, you released your plan for that just this week, and it does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana. Now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings. Now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
Surprisingly good question.
I'm glad you asked me this question, and there have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very clear.
No, you're not.
I made a decision to become a prosecutor for two reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias. And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had. But I made a decision that if I was going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings for police officers on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration, about taking the profit out of the criminal justice system. I plan on shutting down for-profit prisons on day one. It will be about what we need to do to hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system from the inside, I will have the ability to be an effective leader and get this job complete.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Small potatoes, but decarceration is clearly a new word and concept
there
for
were
her.
dozens of incidents where black men were killed by police. Critics say that too often you sided with police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
Matt Stoller has a pretty funny tweet.
We are here.
Kamala Harris is making a special announcement tonight where she will randomly pick 10 families across America and incarcerate them.
Something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state. I now believe it is better for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards who was doing her homework at her kitchen table and was shot through the window.
That's how I
What changes did we make? Go after white-collar crimes in a big way. Diversify the office in a big way. Work with the Innocence Project to make sure we do much better with eyewitness ID. And as a senator and as your president, I will make sure that we don't just do the First Step Act when it comes to criminal sentencing, that we move to the Second Step Act, which means the 90% of people that are incarcerated in local and state jails. Let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders, and let's get them jobs and let them vote when they get out of prison.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. You all believe that the war on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President Biden, you have a plan to release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough.
I have a plan to do that? First of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in a poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people.
Right, and he's having to go to his notes. He has to go to his notes for rhetoric.
The fact
of the matter is,
the whole model has to change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime.
The fact of the matter is that
the
shot that Simone gave me is wearing off.
People from the federal prison system. Nobody should be in jail for a drug problem. They should be going directly to a rehabilitation. We build more rehabilitation centers, not prisons. I'm the guy that put in the drug courts to divert people from the criminal justice system. And so we have to change the whole way we look at this. And
You're
we put
also
people
the guy
in prison,
who wrote the
we have
crime
to
bill.
equip them when they get out. Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged.
Position on raves?
Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines.
Obviously.
And the fact is we've learned so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
About the radical possibility of ecstasy therapy.
Our criminal justice system is so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives. And so much of this comes down to privilege. We have a criminal justice system that Brian Stevenson says treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And so I have challenged this whole field. We can specifically and demonstratively now show that there are 17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom. We need to reform this system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
Thank you, Lindsey. I want to turn to the deadly mass shootings here in this country. And of course, we are all mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last month alone. El Paso, which we've discussed, in Odessa. And I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor. If you couldn't get it done after Sandy Hook, why should voters give you another chance?
Because the guy's done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, gun violence. We've seen what's happened again. Now we have all these young people marching on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying
I hope it brought
is
candy
correct.
for everybody.
Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of the basement.
I'm paused.
So the point is,
maybe you're not
things
the only
have
one
changed,
that needs an energy
and things
boost,
have changed
you prick.
a lot. And now what's happening is, and by the way, the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right. Beto's good.
The way he
Thank you for messaging me, sir.
What happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this
we
is the
are
problem.
ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here. You did bring up assault weapons here, and many of you on this stage have talked about executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional.
And yes, we can, because I'll tell you something.
It's the lamest fight ever.
Uncomfortable an exchange you could find.
We
all love
more
Obama.
autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you. And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing to act, is just, it is overlooking the fact that every day in America, our babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students, where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills. It is traumatizing our children. El Paso. And Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy.
She is Biden.
There must be
Harris
a real sense that he is so far out of it.
Totally.
Well, do you think
they're all
Trump,
condescendingly
is
nice to him?
responsible for what happened?
Can I have your 2%, please, Beto?
Beto, God love you.
Certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
I'm glad they're being nice to my baby
Senator
boy.
Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand by what you said on an executive order?
What I said was, the question, speak to constitutional scholars. If, in fact, we could say, by the way, you can't own the following weapons, period. They cannot be sold anymore. Check with constitutional scholars. Now,
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Congressman O'Rourke, I want to come to you on this. I'm going to work down the road here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am. If it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield.
Enough with this battlefield thing.
It's
true.
The high impact,
but they shouldn't
be anywhere.
I don't like the juxtaposition. Like, we can use them in Afghanistan.
Because it was designed to do that,
to kill Iraqis,
so that you would bleed to death
certainly.
on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Points off for misuse of my catchphrase.
I want to say this. I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America into the conversation. Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike.
Make a point. Congressman, thank you. I want to bring in Senator Klobuchar on this because you've often talked about your uncle and the Proud Hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response to Congressman O'Rourke tonight. Where do you stand on mandatory gun buybacks?
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us. Everyone up here favors an assault weapon ban. Everyone up here favors magazine limitations, which, by the way, would have made a huge difference if that was in place in El Paso, in that store where all those ordinary people showed such extraordinary courage. And certainly in Dayton, Ohio, where in 30 seconds, one man guns down innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us. You know what else unites us? And I'll tell you this. What unites us is that right now on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills. universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
Senator
So we
Klobuchar.
want to get something done.
Yes, is there a reason why they're not calling on Bernie or...
I just said I think it's been
voluntary
literally
buyback
20 minutes
program.
since either
That's
of
what
them
I
spoke.
think, David. But I want to finish
I
this
think
because
they
if you want
they
action now,
each have
if you want
a
action
multiple
now,
of 5 of any of the other people who have been talking in terms of polls.
To Mitch McConnell, we can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now.
McConnell ain't passing.
Senator
We
Klobuchar.
cannot spare another innocent life.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker because you have said
Why?
just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue. Look, I grew up in the suburbs. It was about 20 years ago that I came out of my home when I moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, and witnessed the aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting after shooting in neighborhoods like mine for decades, this has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for gun licensing.
It's literally been 20 minutes.
And I'm happy that people like Beto O'Rourke are showing such courage now and coming forward and also now supporting licensing. But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change. This is a crisis of empathy in our nation. We are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to personally affect us or our neighborhood or our community before we demand action. You want to know how we get this done? We get this done by having a more courageous empathy where people don't wait for this hell to visit upon their communities. They stand up and understand the truth of what King said, that injustice anywhere
about
is
empathy.
a threat
It's
to
about
justice
people
everywhere.
who believe
I
that
will
guns should be
lead
taken
change
away,
on this issue
overpower
because I have
those
seen
who don't.
It's about risking the
carnage like you're leaving out a bit
possibility
of
of a
empathy.
greater
Because we
imagination,
forget
bro.
national
That's what it's about.
shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that will bring more personal passion on this issue. I will fight this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights, if it was this idea that we can't get it done because of the situation in the Senate, I'm looking to lead a movement. The number one reason why
the problem with Booker is that the more you hear him talk,
citizenry.
everything sounds
Think about
exactly
this. We have had more people die due to gun violence in my lifetime than every single war in this country combined from the Revolutionary War till now. This is not a side issue to me. It is a central issue to me. That is the kind of fight, because the majority of homicide victims, we have a mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together and overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency, because the majority of Americans, the majority of gun owners agree with me, not the corporate gun lobby. It is time for a movement on this issue, and I will lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next, because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it, and we're going to have to do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country significantly. But here's the deal. The question we need to ask is when we've got this much support across the country, 90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us do background checks, want to get assault weapons off the streets. Why doesn't it happen? And the answer is corruption, pure and simple. We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry. And unless we're willing to address that head on and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to change Congress so it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren, thank you. You bring up eliminating the filibuster, which means you would need simply a simple majority in a Republican Senate to get something done. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this, because you've said before of this, if Donald Trump supports ending the filibuster, which he's talked about himself, you should be nervous. Would you support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support absolutely is passing major legislation. The gun legislation the people here are talking about, Medicare for all, climate change legislation that saves the planet. I will not wait for 60 votes to make that happen. And you could do it in a variety of ways. You could do that through budget reconciliation law. You have a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is appropriate and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back to a point that Elizabeth made. And that, in fact, in terms of gun issues, and picking up on Cory and Beto and everybody else, what we are looking at is a corrupt political system. And that means whether it is the drug companies or the insurance companies or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or in this case, you got an NRA, which has intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud that year after year I had an F rating from the NRA. And as president, I will not be intimidated by the NRA.
Senator Sanders, thank you.
May I respond?
Can I very much?
We've been hearing a lot about what's been happening here in Texas. Only a few weeks ago, the deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among Latinos, and you know this, is very real. So let me start with an issue that is causing a lot of division in this country, immigration. Vice President Biden, as a presidential candidate in 2008, you supported the border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of fence. This is what you said. Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most ever in U.S. history. Did you do anything to prevent those deportations? I mean, you've been asked this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again. Are you prepared to say tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous.
That's not the question.
Number one, we didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things. Number
Literally
one.
every
Number
president
two,
locks people up in cages.
Number two, by the time this is the president who came along with the DACA program. No one had ever done that before. This is the president who sent a legislation to the desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million undocumented in the United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him. What I would do as president is several more things, because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change the order that the president just changed, saying women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act is up. The Republican Congress has not reauthorized it. Let's put pressure on them to pass the Violence Against Women Act now. But then we'll go back.
You didn't answer the question.
The border, Joe.
Did you make a
What was the
mistake
question?
with those deportations?
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the time.
How about you?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice President Biden?
Now he's the vice president.
Because, your party controlled the White House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA or give up a path to citizenship or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants?
Jorge, thank you very much for that question. And look, I agree that Barack Obama was very different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating and fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, and Cory pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there. That's me, too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer to any questions.
Ow.
President Biden, you have 45 seconds.
Guess who has come to the conclusion that he will not be Joe Biden's running mate?
I was the first candidate in early April to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn and have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And we're going to pass immigration reform within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
I did not say I don't stand. I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years. Good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
Okay, Senator Warren, hundreds of children have been
So he does stand by the deportations.
We saw the largest immigration rate in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker. Immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand legal immigration and create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not a system that is keeping us safer, and it is not serving our values.
Mr. Yang.
I want to add one more part on this, because I think we have to look at all the pieces.
I want to hear his
Why do we have a crisis at the border? In no small part because we have withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore that help. We need to help establish and reestablish the rule of law so that people don't feel like they have to flee for their lives. We have a crisis that Donald Trump has created and hopes to profit from politically. We have to have the courage to stand up and fight back.
Mr. Yang, it is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe anti-immigrant measures, from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum for people fleeing gangs and domestic violence. But it is also true that about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S. legally every year. So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me? Or?
Mr. Yang.
Already said it. Okay.
Sorry. The immigrants,
my father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with the American people. If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by their immigrants or children of immigrants, and rates of business formation are much higher in immigrant communities. We have to say to the American people, immigrants are positive for our economic and social dynamism, and I would return the level of legal immigration to the point it was under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations. If we lose that, we lose something integral to our continued success. And that is where
such a nice way to think about human beings.
We have so much Soylent Green.
8 out of 10 Latinos in Texas fear another mass shooting targeting them. This is according to a new Univision poll. President Trump has called Mexican immigrants rapists and killers, tried to ban Muslims from entering the country, and separated children from their parents. His supporters have chanted, build a wall and send her back. Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo. The only people, though, who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any. We have an opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform. In my community, a group of conservative Republicans rallied around an individual, a beloved local individual who was deported when he went into ICE to try to get his paperwork sorted out, because they never thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow, and it's why part of my plan for revitalizing the economies of rural America includes community renewal visas that would allow cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after years of shrinking, is immigration. It's one of the reasons we acted, not waiting for Washington, to create city-issued municipal IDs so that people, regardless of immigration status, in our city had the opportunity to have the benefits of identification. We have an opportunity to actually get something done, but we cannot allow this to continue to be the same debate with the same arguments and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values, values of welcome, values of faith that all argue for us to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted. In an interview 8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know. Do you have an answer now?
I do. And if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays. But I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America, in the image of El Paso, Texas, one of the safest cities in the United States of America. Safe, not despite the fact that we are a city of immigrants, safe because we are a city of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. I will lead an effort to make sure that we rewrite our immigration laws in that way. Never cage another child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7 lives lost under our care and our custody, but also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family or to work a job, that we have been part of deporting people, hundreds of thousands just in the Obama administration alone, who posed no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country.
Gracias.
And extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers. And ensure that we have a legal, safe, orderly system to come to this country and add to our greatness here.
Thank you, George.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, national security, foreign policy, the impact on American jobs and U.S. troops.
There you have it, folks. We are now an hour and 20 minutes into a 3-hour debate.
Maybe we'll, maybe we'll ease it out a little bit.
Maybe we'll go on Uncle Joe time. Huh?
Maybe can we have an Uncle Joe quitting time tonight?
It is they definitely, ABC definitely seems to be wanting to sort of like forefront the people who are in the low single digits in terms of their percentage. I don't know if that's a function. I mean, look, they sit down, they know who they're going to ask these questions to. They have it written out. They pick the topics. If you talk criminal justice reform, theoretically, supposedly, at least according to ABC, you're in Cory Booker's wheelhouse because he's, I guess, passed legislation. But the fact of the matter is that Warren and Sanders also have criminal justice reforms. Sanders is incredibly ambitious.
Half of the prison population would be released automatically. Yeah. I mean, this is someone you might want to
bring
into that
never
conversation.
went to him with that question at all.
Yeah, that's
I think
crazy.
They went to Warren very late in the conversation. They basically shut them out.
Well, we clocked it. I think that's an official. That's at least 20 minutes without Sanders or Warren.
It was nuts,
and that is both. It's look. Let's be honest. If it was the other way around, we'd be complaining that it's ideologically skewed. But it's ideologically and politically skewed. Those are the three main candidates, and two of them are not getting speaking time.
Well, they let them talk about health care, and that's fine because they're seen as the class politics people. But
they're the mommy candidates.
Intersectional politics, racial politics.
They're the mommy candidates.
Well, they also get the same questions on health care that they always get.
Like ABC is happy to continue the narrative that Bernie Sanders only cares about class-wide demands and doesn't have an intersectional analysis.
I guess we'll see what happens here with foreign policy. I mean, if they're going to go to foreign policy stuff, they're going to go to Joe Biden.
Joe Biden
because he was the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he's the guy. I'm the guy who did this. I'm the guy.
Christ, I can't.
President Obama.
What on earth?
This is disgusting. Disgusting.
Well,
Can we
Joe Biden
skip Rom,
energy.
please?
That was his first.
Unless you guys really want to
It's
hear
bizarre.
It is stunning. They're bringing Rahm Emanuel out to deliver all of Joe Biden's talking points. He brought energy. He's not that old, is what the pitch is from Rahm Emanuel. I mean, this is a guy.
His eyes didn't melt out of his head.
I mean, honestly, this would be like if they were just bringing on Dennis Kucinich. Honestly, in terms of just sheer ideology in terms of who he's got
but honestly, not even, because I've heard Dennis Kucinich in a variety of settings, and he's actually His actually does far more just like balls and strikes. This is how they came across. This is what it looks like. Rahm doesn't even do that.
No, he's lying. He's up there as basically carrying water for Joe Biden. I mean, without
a doubt.
Like there should be a disclaimer, frankly, up front. When
his
Rahm
Chiron should say child murderer cover-upper, investment banker, Joe Biden surrogate, former unpopular mayor.
Well, and then I would also say, what he did in terms of Chicago schools is horrific.
All right, let's throw that. Let's make that another Chiron.
50
destroyer of schools.
I closed 50 schools. Basically, said it's okay for public school kids not to have art, but we're going to support that at our private schools. He's a horrible. He's a horrible guy, and if it wasn't, he wanted to abandon. Even the ACA as being too ambitious. He would curse out the left.
Effing retards.
Let's go back. I think we're about to start.
Back to you, David.
But the biggest losers so far is us tonight. There is,
Obviously.
I mean, honestly, there's very little value in this so far. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, from there's going to be theoretically a lot more people tuning into this, I think, than past debates. I think.
But on a substantive level, I mean, I just don't. I don't think people are coming out with any greater understanding. I mean, it is really interesting. I would say the only debate so far where there's been a couple where you've gotten some hits on Biden, and then there was a debate where they tried to unleash Delaney at Warren and Sanders, and they both did a very effective job.
This is heaven compared to that.
But this is, I mean, nothing's really coming across. I think partially because the moderating, the obscure candidates, and Biden has enough energy tonight to make his incoherent rambling sound like. Do you
think he's eating candy, or do you think that he's taking some type of drugs?
I've already talked about the testosterone shots that I think. I mean, I literally think he could be getting roided up.
Fun fact about Rahm Emanuel: did you know that he got his undergraduate degree at Sarah Lawrence in ballet and classical dance?
Yes,
I did not know that.
Yes, I did. That's why.
The banality of evil, folks.
At the Chicago live show, we described Rahm Emanuel as the most evil ballerina in history, which is actually stiff competition.
I want to hear them talk some more about immigration and how immigrants affect the economy without mentioning human rights once. That's what I'm here for.
I want to know how all of you are going to handle these tariffs. And Mr. Yang, let me begin with you. Would you repeal the tariffs on your first day in office?
Turn his mic down.
Would you risk losing leverage in our trade relationship with China?
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal. Because right now, the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO friend of mine was in China recently, and he said that he saw pirated U.S. intellectual property on worker workstations to the tune of thousands of dollars per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are real.
That's not about
but we have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides. So no to repealing the tariffs immediately, but yes to making sure we come to a deal that addresses the concerns of American companies and American producers.
Mayor Pete, let me take that question.
He's going to talk more than Bernie.
Let me take that question to you, because you've seen President Trump's tweets. He says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to happen in, like, April? It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that happens on the international stage, people take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are serious consequences. We saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change, and there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever, whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States, or anywhere around the world where increasingly we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you repeal the tariffs?
I would have a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced the entire China challenge into a question of tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Senator Klobuchar, you've actually supported the tariffs on
get to the leading candidates.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans that are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest, in my state of Minnesota and in Iowa. So what I think we need to do is to go back to the negotiating table. That's what I would do. I wouldn't have put all these tariffs in place, and I wouldn't have had a trade policy where on August 1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th, he cuts it in half. A week later, he says he's going to reduce taxes. The day after that, he says he's going to do it.
Yeah, we know. Trump's
the leaders of the world are watching
articles
this,
about
and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of
one time I told
trade
this
policy,
staff
which
member
I
that
think
I
means
would fucking
enforcement, like we've done in northern Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do more on that, so that our workers can benefit. So we are importing,
and then they thought they were going to have another job, and I called the head of the Ford
that is a
Foundation,
competitive
and I
policy
blackballed him
where our goal is that we are making
bit.
things, inventing things, and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the previous debates identified China as the most serious national security threat to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying, though. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage?
Right now,
Where do you
literally.
get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war is hurting American families. As Senator Klobuchar said, 300,000 American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So when I become president, I would immediately begin to negotiate with China to ratchet down that trade war. We have leverage there. I also believe, though, that we need to return to a leader when it comes to things like human rights. We have millions of Uyghurs, for instance, in China that right now are being imprisoned and mistreated. And in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down. We have leverage in that discussion.
Senator Warren, let me bring you in on this conversation. President Obama signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In part, it was designed to rein in China, to bring China in to some kind of regulation. What do you think he got wrong?
So our trade policy in America has been broken for
I'll tell you what, George. I think Barack Obama was a fraud, a lightweight pseudo-intellectual.
Corporations, and not for much of anyone else. These are giant corporations.
He was obsessed with his own.
Shoot, if they can save a nickel by moving a job to a foreign country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. And yet, for decades now, who's been whispering in the ears of our trade negotiators? Who has shaped our trade policy? It's been the giant corporations. It's been their lobbyists and their executives. The way we change our trade policy in America is first, the procedures. Who sits at the table? I want to negotiate trade with unions at the table. I want to negotiate it with small farmers at the table. I want to negotiate it with environmentalists at the table. I want to negotiate with human rights activists at the table.
Overflow?
And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one. The leverage? Are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the American market. That means that we have the capacity to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards, and you've got to raise your environmental standards so our companies can compete on a level playing field. We can use trade not to undermine American workers and not to undermine American farms and not to undermine small businesses in this country. We can use trade to help build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, why wouldn't you
not go to Bernie at that point?
Well, first of all,
it's stunning.
I have no criticism of
Here's
that
the talk.
more than just looking at where
Sanders
we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has
literally
been
gotten less speaking time than Klobuchar, Harris, Buttigieg, O'Rourke, Castro.
In Iowa with soybeans.
Only Yang has less time than Bernie Sanders. That's just
when we look at this
nuts.
issue, my trade policy under a Harris administration is always going to be about saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a protectionist Democrat. Look, we need to sell our stuff. And that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that allow that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our intellectual property. They dump substandard products into our economy. They need to be held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this. Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz. You know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
The wizard? She's trying to get him to tweet about it. You got to go to Bernie Sanders now.
Bernie.
Also, he's got small hands.
I'm going to take this to Senator.
George, it wasn't about you.
I'm going to take this to Senator Sanders right
there
now.
This
is so weird.
About freaking
It's
time.
not that funny. Okay, let's go.
In the last 45 years, the average American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago. And one of the reasons is that for decades we have had disastrous trade policies. And I got to say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe and I strongly disagree on trade.
Boom.
I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs.
There you go.
And what happened is people who had those jobs ended up getting other jobs, making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue.
Opposed by every union.
Trump thinks that trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere who are losing billions right now because of Trump's policy. A trade policy which understands that if a company shuts down in America and goes abroad and then thinks they're going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, you invoke your name.
Yeah. Well, look, we're either going to make the policy or China's going to make the rules of the road.
Oh, God.
We make up 25% of the world economy.
Global corporations
we need
make
another 25% to join us.
That's what you voted for.
And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be labor, and at the table have to be environmentalists. The fact of the matter is, China, the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping steel on us. That's a different issue than whether or not they're dumping agricultural products on us. In addition to that, we're in a position where if we don't set the rules, we, in fact, are going to find ourselves with China setting the rules. And that's why you need to organize the world to take on China to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round. Sure. There's one point we're really missing on the stage right now, which is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy.
Exactly right.
From trade to battling China to the global crisis of climate change, the challenges in the Middle East, he is pulling us away from our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now, look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte and Putin than he does with Merkel and Macron. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and our strength is multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies in common cause and common purpose. That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth. And that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn now to our troops overseas into America's longest war in Afghanistan. U.S. talks with the Taliban are dead, according to the president. Secret talks at Camp David have been canceled before they could happen. Many of you have weighed in on that already. So
Shame Tulsi's not here to represent the Hawks.
To what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage have said you'd bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail. President Obama wanted to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home. And you have said of Afghanistan,
President Obama did not talk about bringing the Afghan troops home. Ending Iraq and
would you keep that
expanding in Afghanistan, getting the job done.
With no deal with the Taliban.
Which I guess presumably was to kill every
and I'll
Afghan.
tell you why.
I don't oppose all wars. I oppose dumb wars.
Is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is not helping the safety and security of the world. It is not helping the safety and security of Afghanistan. We need to bring our troops home. And then we need to make a big shift. We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily. We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem of terrorism as a worldwide problem. And that means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies, our Canadian allies, our Asian allies, our allies in Africa and in South America. We need to work together to root out terrorism. It means using all of our tools. It means economic investment. It means expanding our diplomatic efforts instead of hollowing out the State Department and deliberately making it so we have no eyes and ears in many of these countries. We need a foreign policy that is about our security and about leading on our values.
Senator Warren, a quick follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't do it without a deal with the Taliban. You just said you would. You would bring them home. Yeah. What if they told you that? Would you listen to their advice?
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past summer. I think it may have been Senator McCain's last trip before he was sick. And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I ask on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through. Show me what winning looks like. Tell me what it looks like. And what you hear is a lot of because no one can describe it. And the reason no one can describe it is because the problems in Afghanistan are not problems that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military. I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. But we cannot ask them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build with our allies. And we need to make the whole world safer, not keep troops bombing in Afghanistan.
Senator Warren, thank you. I do want to stay on this, and I want to turn to Mayor Buttigieg, because you're the only veteran on this stage. You served in Afghanistan. We heard in recent days from General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support to deal with the level of violence.
We're going to ask you a question so we can avoid talking, Bernie.
If he's not even using the word withdrawal, would you put your promise to bring troops home in the first year on hold to follow the advice?
You know, I served under General Dunford, way under General Dunford in Afghanistan. And today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so, when I am president, an authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote, and a president will be required to go to Congress to seek an authorization. Because if our troops can summon the courage to go overseas, the least our members of Congress should be able to do is summon the courage to take a vote on whether they ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president right now
died the first 3 years of Iraq?
Seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through
U.S.
so people can stay in these hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform,
DOD numbers would probably say
do not let these men and women down. This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg,
I think that's low, but that's just gives you one end of the
because
spectrum.
the concerns about any possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were vice president, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign trail, quote, "I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq." There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq. You then had to send thousands of troops back in. Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
No, it wasn't wrong to pull up. But I want to answer an Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service.
My friend, what's his name over there?
Anybody on this.
My friend, the gay, boring guy. Anyways,
you
know what
people.
I'm saying.
I was opposed to the surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It cannot be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties, the 3 provinces, and the east. They're not any part of it. The economies run it. I will go on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counterterrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases, insist that Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in, was that, in fact, we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, et cetera. And it was later, when we came into office, the president turned to me and said, Joe, when they said we had a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, Joe will organize this. Get the troops home. My son spent a year in Iraq, and I understand. And we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted, was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving in.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this because the concern over Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw
sell
in Iraq.
The Afghanistan parts they
ISIS
own.
Filled that vacuum.
Those are their 3 parts. They own them.
People out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the waters of 9/11.
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something that Vice President said.
Afghanistan, whatever.
Talked about the big mistake in Iraq and the surge. The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake, and one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq.
Dipset.
Against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I mean, I kind of, had the feeling that there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all three of Trump's military budgets.
Thank you.
I don't think we have to spend $750 billion a year on the military when we don't even know who our enemy is. I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change. Bring it together in fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a planet, as a global community, will work together to help countries around the world rebuild their struggling economies and do everything that we can to rid the world of terrorism. But dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
Senator Sanders, thank you. I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the stage, as you know, when we talk about troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with the Vice President who was in the Situation Room, with senators who are on the Senate Armed Services, the Foreign Relations Committees,
I don't have much
with an
to say,
Afghanistan
but I would
veteran
give
who is on the stage
phosphorus.
tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be Commander-in-Chief?
I'm a businessman.
I've signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state of continuous armed conflict for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good at rebuilding countries, and if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico.
What?
We've spent trillions of dollars to unclear benefits, lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades.
The point's well taken.
I would lead
he could have
armed
just
forces
said,
with restraint
we're in the midst
judgment.
of an 18-year-old war. I mean, do you think they're doing it right?
Who has the
is
right
all he really needed to
values
say.
and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way. And that's what I would do as president.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
Jorge. Thank you very much. Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela.
Oh, I know.
A recent UN
Oh, there it comes.
Here thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why, and what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Here.
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%. That's my understanding of democratic socialism.
Foiled again, Jorge. Foiled again.
Sure. Thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator. And what we need to do is to, along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections.
I hope
and also
Jorge
here in the
will
United
ask
States,
Biden about the weather machine that
status,
Obama
TPS,
has.
to Venezuelans. That is
as long as he's using Republican talking points.
Right. Big talk about supporting the Venezuelan
what about the
American
cell
community.
phones,
He has failed.
the
I will
Obama
not.
phones?
I also believe that we need to do things like a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador,
okay, and I just want to say, though, this is exactly why you cannot trust Julian Castro when he talks about his Marshall Plan. He's going right from hawkish nonsense about Venezuela to his Marshall Plan, which no one should trust.
Is there that much of a difference between dictator and horrible tyrant?
We have a country like China that is going around the world to places like Africa and Latin America,
but I think, whatever, that's
the United States
semantics. Although I think, frankly, even in terms of people having an understanding of how
Senator Booker,
even a situation that's much worse than Venezuela looks, dictator brings an unsophisticated image to mind. Even an example like in Zimbabwe or Egypt, like Mubarak or Mugabe were dictatorial. They actually were not absolute dictators. They represented regimes and systems. When you say, but I would have, if I was Bernie, I wish he made a little bit more of a point to oppose intervention there, but I appreciated the pivot. But again, this is also where people's credibility comes into play. Bernie has had the right position on it. Castro never has.
Yeah, this should be a question purely about interventionism. Like, you don't need to go out of your way to shit talk Maduro.
Look,
and I'm kind of done with people, even Bernie, fetishizing the social democracies of Scandinavia and throwing any efforts at socialism in the developing world under the bus.
Well, it's also like the reason that Venezuela or Jamaica or plenty of places have had trouble doing what Scandinavia has done is because of like CIA coups.
Yeah, no shit.
Yes. Because of the kind of incentives we are giving that don't line up with our values. That's what I'm calling for. But I want to switch because we don't have crowded debate stage. We were talking about Afghanistan and Iraq. It annoys me that we had a conversation about our troops overseas and we didn't say one word about veterans in our country. We have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as we, as a country, understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this outrageous increased militarism, that we also make sure that we stand up for the people that stood for us. We end our national anthem with Home of the Brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke, Hurricane Harvey hit this town 2 years ago, and not only is the Amazon burning, Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded, and we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change, and can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Yes, we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because this is the very future of our planet and our ability for our children and grandchildren to be able to survive on it. We will make sure that we get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than the year 2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas, with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger and more devastating than ever. We're also going to make sure that we free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels and embrace renewable wind and solar energy technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come along with that. And then we're going to pay farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide, planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using no-till farming. Regenerative agriculture can pull carbon out of the air and can drive it and sequester it into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet this challenge, and we're going to bring everyone into the solution.
Many of you want to comment. Let's try to see if we can go
Buddy,
very
you're
fast.
doing great.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time. It's, you know, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? It's today.
There's that humor again.
There's my zingers.
In the Midwest, flooding in
most
Houston,
electable.
Fires in
Most
the West.
electable.
And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will
I
allow
just heard
us
a
to talk
report
about
that
this in a
Biden's
different way
teeth
and get
fell
it
out
done.
during the debate.
On day one,
Did anybody notice
I
that?
will get us back into the International Climate Change Agreement. On day two, I will bring back the clean power rules that President Obama had worked on. On day three, I will bring back the gas mileage standards. You can do all that without Congress, which is good. On day 4, 5, and 6, I will, working with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator
This
Warren.
is what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator
She's
Warren,
like
should
the
American
female
foreign
version
policy
of
be
Michael
based around
Scott.
the principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time the scientists go back, they say we have less and less time than we thought we had. But that means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those three, will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need to help around the world to clean, but understand this one more time. Why doesn't it happen? As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old. When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I'm really scared. And when I've been in the United States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts, the Republicans in the United States Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see, but it's a lack of courage. And this is an issue that, yes, it represents an existential threat. It is also something we can do something about. This is a problem that was created by human behaviors. And we can change our behaviors in a way that saves our planet. I've seen it happen in California. I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. I took on the big oil companies, and we saw progress. If any of you have been to Los Angeles 20 years ago, you'll remember that sky was brown. You go there now, the sky is blue, and you know why? Because leader just decided to lead, and we took on these big fossil fuel companies. We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the country, and we made a difference. And my point being, I've done it before, and I will lead as president on this issue because we have no time. The clock is ticking, but we need courage, and we need courageous leadership. We can get this done.
Mr. Yang.
They are not going to call on Bernie at all.
Follow up
on what Elizabeth said. Why are we losing to the fossil fuel companies?
It's not like
he
signed on to some type of Green New
And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has
climate
a plan
change
to try and curb those corporate
Why
interests.
Would you ask the guy with the most ambitious climate
money
change plan?
finds a way.
It wouldn't be fair
money
to the
will
others.
find its way back in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give every American $100 democracy dollars that you can only give to candidates and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1.
Klobuchar gets my
that is the
most
only way we will
improved
win.
so
And as someone running for president, I'll tell you, there's
Wow.
the people on one side and the money on
What
the
did
other.
I say?
The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Lindsay.
I'd like to have an academic discussion now about education. Mr. Yang, we'll stay with you. Here in Houston, the school district is facing yet another year of spending cuts.
Green
like
New Deal,
schools
Green New
across
what?
the country, the system faces many challenges. One of them, thousands of students are leaving traditional public schools and going to charter schools. You're the most vocal proponent on this stage for charter schools. You have said that Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
Let me be clear. I am pro-good school. I've got a kid.
As opposed to the other people
Little boys just started public school last week, and I was not there because I
Bernie
was
just said we're going to fund the bad schools more.
So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. We need to lighten up the emphasis on standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our character or human worth. But here's the big one. The data clearly shows that 65 to 70% of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school.
Yeah.
We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the house, income, type of neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
I mean, he's identified the problem exactly, and any educator will tell you that. I don't know that.
Step one is
UBI
appoint a secretary of education who actually believes in public education.
The key, but Yang's answer was
pretty good.
Spot on.
I believe in public education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social
this is all
and
BS.
emotional
He doesn't
learning.
know. Leave
Some
that
of
to
it
the
is
educators.
extremely
How are you
simple.
going to fund
We've
it?
just
Get
got
rid
to
of
pay teachers more.
property taxes.
And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession, respect teachers the way we do soldiers, and pay them more like the way we do doctors.
Senator Warren.
Wait, did Yang support charter schools?
Just jumping into bed with
I didn't
teachers'
hear
unions?
that in his answer.
Also, I think I'm the only person on the stage
I wouldn't be
has
surprised
been
if he
a public
does.
school teacher.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I just didn't hear it.
I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in second grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this.
I guess he is. I didn't hear that.
Money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in this country. That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in this country. Cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who...
How about 100?
Thank you, Senator.
And strengthen our unions. This is how we build an America that reflects our values, not just where the money comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds to respond.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered in this campaign a proposal to deal with this, which will be the first in the nation federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500 a year. Because right now in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have, as part of my proposal, that we will put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers because one, as a proud graduate of a historically black college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you, Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, they are 32% more likely to go to college. So when we talk about investing in our public education system, it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children.
Senator
and I strongly believe
and
you
if
can
those black
judge
children don't show up to school, I'm going to put their parents in jail.
And we are failing on this issue.
Guess what? You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves, which is why under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year. What we will also do is not only have universal pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities and HBCUs debt-free. And what we will also do, because this is an incredible burden on millions and millions of young people who did nothing wrong except try to get the education they need, we are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
And we are going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator.
One of my favorite tracks with Bernie, in fact.
I want to come to you and talk to you about inequality in schools and race. In a conversation about how to deal with segregation in schools back in 1975, you told a reporter, I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago. You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility
first of all, Strom Thurmond was a great guy. Oh, wait a second. I'm going to reset
slavery in our country?
Well, they have to deal with look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position where...
Oh, wait.
Look, you talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend from $15 to $45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000 level. Number two, make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 kids in America today. It's crazy.
What?
The teachers are retired. I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have make sure that every single child does, in fact, have 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help.
Give the parents
they don't know
money to buy
what to
food.
do.
No.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there. There's so much. No, I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over, okay? Because here's the deal. The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number two, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $740 million
stroking out right now.
to see to it those three countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Secretary Castro. We're going to give Victrola to black kids.
Well,
poor kids.
Quite a lot.
Good for Castro being there.
You know, I grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today, our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. Right. Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED.
I just want to make it clear,
opportunities, and those things that
Biden did not address anything remotely like
those are the types of things.
Hey, you want to talk about school segregation? I want to talk about record players, and I didn't get a chance to threaten Maduro. What the hell? I know him. I said the same thing to him I said to Putin. That was one of my other lives.
The worst part about Maduro scratches all the records.
Well, I'm not
I believe it's pronounced Maduro.
More transparency and
Maduro, he doesn't know about black
Senator
kids
Booker,
learning the words.
It was 65 years ago this year.
And so did
that the
Strom
Supreme
Thurmond. He was my
Court
friend.
outlawed racial segregation in public schools.
Should mention him
Yet for millions of students of color today, segregation remains a reality. Non-white districts typically receive $2,200 less per student than those in white districts. This means older books, less access to computers, and often worse outcomes.
He asked for and
what is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity.
Well, you see who's asking the questions.
So
they clearly got their priorities in order.
Maduro is
on the stage and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools. And we produced results. A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And we didn't stop there. We closed poor-performing charter schools, but we expanded high-performing charter schools. We were a city that said we need to find local solutions that work for our community. The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about these problems isolated, disconnected from other issues. That's why my friend Secretary Castro is 100% right. We are in the reality we are right now because, Vice President, of overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago, just in my lifetime. that we're redlining communities, disinvesting in
come
communities.
on, I threatened
and more than
Medora.
just that, my kids
Leave
are
me
not only
alone.
struggling with racial segregation and housing and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem. Because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the lead levels
Yeah,
of
let's
Flint,
not talk
Michigan.
about lead.
And so if I'm President of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues of poverty, combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system that takes parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major pillar of any climate policy.
Thank you, Lindsay. One final
Senator,
question
I have
coming
a follow-up
up.
question
We'll be
about
right
the
back.
lead crisis in your own city.
All right, folks.
No ABC person ever.
Somebody start vamping. I've got to run to the bathroom. But Joe Biden, boy, I'll tell you something. He better hope there's not a 4-hour debate. I can tell you that because.
Sorry, this is a pop culture reference that someone fed me, but am I debating next to a Grandpa Simpson meme? Thank you.
I think Bernie should honestly pull a Trump and refuse to do debates unless there's some firm commitments.
Folks, I just took a DNA test, and I'll tell you what.
Yeah, we're in a new era. They're using Ancestry.com, folks. These are new times, and the black kids, they can be smart, but they don't know the words. That's what we got to deal with. That's why I threatened Venezuela.
I mean, these debates are
Pointless. A waste of time.
Look, they're not totally pointless.
Not persuading
because they
anybody.
can have an effect on. Although I do think, frankly, like the negative coverage of Sanders is already baked into the cake. Warren hasn't had a great night. Biden in the beginning, I thought he was going to... She's fine, but there's nothing like to write about.
Watch them.
I thought Biden, if he kept up his energy tempo and relative coherence, and I underline the word relative, might have had like a Joe Biden's back on the horse, but he's trailing off significantly. I mean,
he is literally
tomorrow,
and figuratively falling apart.
The only thing that they'll have to say tomorrow, I could imagine, would be that Julian Castro was aggressive and he got in some good lines.
The way we do
not
this
much
is
has
a joke.
happened here.
None of these networks should have the debates. It should be on C-SPAN. I don't care if it reaches more people this way. Like George Stephanopoulos, I don't think he should be even involved in politics.
It needs to be. No, I don't. I don't even have.
You don't think Rahm Emanuel should be doing
I don't.
it?
I don't even have in my head who should be doing this. Honestly, like I'm not even going to say like, oh, the sort of lefty commentary. I don't even know from a television journalist objective perspective who should like. Bill Moyers comes to mind, right? And he's in his 80s. But these debates need to be treated as a public commons and not in this format.
I think one thing
with these
that is clear from this is that both Bernie and Warren have made the assessment, it may be right, it may be wrong, that Joe Biden is going to implode on his own at this point, and they do not want to alienate his voters. Neither one of them want to do that. And I think there was a lot of anticipation that Warren would go after Biden, and we still have 40 minutes left in the debate, 35 minutes left in the debate. I guess it's conceivable that there'll be, something like the bankruptcy bill would come up. I mean, one would have anticipated that probably around health care. But right now, it seems like the leading candidates think that Joe Biden is going to implode. Now, the Republicans thought the same thing about Donald Trump, and they were wrong. So I guess we'll see. But it'll be interesting to see if anybody...
Bernie's took a few hits on
How many people out there are so excited to vote for Joe Biden that they're going to be like, how dare you say that about my man?
Oh
well,
my God.
I don't know, but that's clearly what Bernie and Warren
he sucks.
think.
Everyone knows that he sucks. Just go after him
CBS
for all the ways
News-
that he sucks.
CBS News, in a step forward in the right direction, has just signed up Robbie Mook as a contributor. So we're really, Yes,
like
another.
All these places, they should
just be totally busted,
torn down to the ground,
root and branch, and everybody fired.
Nationalize.
Let's go
clean
and see
the
what
house.
I'm curious. Will they keep going to this one?
A lot of cheers really every time any one of these candidates brings up historically black colleges and universities, and also whenever any of the candidates bring up former President Barack Obama. This is obviously a big deal for the city of Houston. And
meaningless, utterly meaningless comments.
Who is being persuaded by all of
this? The number one issue that really matters to you in this election?
Education.
Gun control. Student loans. And that
record
is
players
one of the
for
ones
everybody.
that we've really been hearing a lot of here. A lot of
Victrola.
Wish
students
my
every
parents
house
played
to
me
hear
records when
what
I was a
these
kid.
candidates have to say when it comes to student loan forgiveness. That's obviously very important. Back to you, Devin.
Yeah, let the kids run the
All right,
debate.
Pugilodia with our friends at KTRK here tracking the student response to this debate. There is much more debate ahead. We're in the home stretch here as the moderators prepare to take their stations. Stay with us here at ABC News Live. Continuing coverage, we'll bring you back to the debate.
When I put my kid to sleep, what I'll do is I'll put an 8-track cassette on.
Maybe like a reel-to-reel?
I grew up listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire. I played Earth, Wind, and Fire for my kids. I do want to just say, I think the idea of Joe Biden essentially saying that he can get a pass on leaving millions of people without health care because of his own family tragedy is
How did you recover
worth
from
remembering.
it?
That was
and what
pretty
did you
tragic.
learn from it?
Yeah.
Vice President Biden.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that are unimportant.
Viva Che! Revolution!
What are they saying?
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, I can't make out a single.
Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
They really need to practice their yelling beforehand to get it more synchronized.
Yelling at Biden.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear them.
We're sorry. Go
What are
ahead.
they saying?
Get them.
There's setbacks and there's setbacks. And I think the most critical setback that can occur to anyone is to
Lose a wife and children.
lose
Children.
Well, my dad had an expression.
So
He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding and whether you get knocked down. It's how quickly you get up. And he used to say, never
And you're never
explain,
gonna
never
keep me down.
complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation
I feel bad. I don't think
that
there's
really
anything
matters,
I've told
the
my
most
kids that they're
important
going to say.
thing
My dad
is
used
family.
to tell me.
And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based on
My
how you
dad
treat your
always
family
used to
and-
pretend
and
he
how you
didn't
went from
remember
there.
my name
And I,
as a joke.
It took,
I don't think that's gonna work the
said,
same way for
faith
my
sees
kids.
best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith.
I'm
for
at
a
the
while.
phase of the evening where in
Came
my
back.
head I'm
And then
doing
later when my son
Bernie
came home
does
from
Trump
Iraq
style bits
with a
about
terminal
Biden's
disease.
tragedies.
And a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my
I
soul.
prefer
But
my
the fact
senators
is
where
that
families
I
attacked.
learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with
All right, I'll
purpose.
I'll stop.
Purpose in what you do. And that's why
Sam
I
asked
hope,
me to do my Yang.
hope he's proud of me
impression.
today because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family
It's
like
just
my
like
dad,
it.
where
Joe
you
Biden
have to make
should
that
just be
longest walk
selling
up the stairs to
vineyards
tell your
full
kid
of
you
this
can't live here anymore.
Put him out to
Dad
pasture.
lost his
Card
job.
money.
You know, we've all went through that, some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always
Purpose,
tried
like
to do and
muscling through
stay
the
engaged in
bankruptcy
public
bill.
policy. But there's a lot of people that through a
Go
lot
to
worse
Joe.
than I have get up every
3-0.
single morning.
3-0.
Three foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there. Some
Thank
real
you, Mr.
heroes.
Vice President. Senator Warren.
I like how Stephanopoulos has a little bit of it. Thank you.
I mentioned
that
earlier,
was so good.
I've known what I wanted to be since.
Does anybody else have anything banal to
to
say
be
that
a
we've
public
all heard
school
them say
teacher.
before?
And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation.
We've
for
all
being
seen
tough
the
but
doll
fair.
picture. It's very creepy and weird.
By the
I like
time
it a lot.
I graduated from high school, my family didn't have money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship, and then at 19, got married, dropped out of school, took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and hired someone else for the job. So there I am. I'm at home, I got a baby, I can't have a job. What am I going to do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was, I practiced law for about 45 minutes, and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights. It gave me new tools. And the reason I'm standing here today is because I got back up. I fought back. I know what's broken. I want to be in the fight to fix it in America.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm seeing that these were DACA recipients protesting Biden.
Oh, is that right?
According to the news source Twitter.com.
Growing up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York, the son of an immigrant who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10-vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in this country, whether it is Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
And incidentally, I prefer vice presidents that don't always talk about their family tragedies.
Every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time, it can't be done. They said, nobody like you has done it before. Nobody is ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in San Francisco. When I ran for Attorney General of California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only black elected Attorney General in the state, in the country. And each time
I said, I will
say,
promise to lock up more people, so much
time,
people.
It's not your turn. It's going to be too difficult. They're not ready for you. And I didn't listen. And a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me. Don't you ever let
that was the mom. That was the mom was Indian. The dad was like, "That's correct. You were not raised by me. I was doing Marxist analysis while you were with your bourgeoisie mother, creating a career of imprisonment, capital interest, and cheap identity politics."
And I see these little
Kamala, you Jamaican me crazy. You never discuss your family background again.
Is he on Twitter? Like, I want to hear more.
We got video of Biden's teeth falling out.
You can call me a Bernie bro.
Isolated that. We'll play that tomorrow on the show.
Don't you ever listen and let anybody ever tell you what you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Saddens me to admit that my daughter represents what might be called the Babylon system.
You know, as
she also has a very tedious, stereotypical sense of humor.
And as an elected official in the state of Indiana,
good morning,
when Mike
Patriots.
Pence was governor. At a certain point,
he does have that
when
vibe,
it came to professional setbacks,
except a lot more boring.
I had to wonder whether just
Patrick Bateman,
that other guy,
who I was,
someone in the Discord
was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional
Buttigieg
setback.
has what Tony Soprano called
I came back from the
Manson
deployment and realized that
true.
You only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated. And that part of how you can win and deserve to win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in the presidency right now. We have to know what we are about. And this election is not about any of us up here. It is not about this president, even though it's hard to talk of anything else some days. It's about the people who trust us with their lives. A kid wondering if we're actually going to make their schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read. A generation wondering whether we will actually get the job done on climate change. And if we hold to that, then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together,
you joined the military to go kill people overseas when you didn't have to.
Judge, thank you.
I can't believe his teeth fell like that. That was actually.
He joined the military to put it on his resume.
I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to share with you all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. It wasn't personal. It was just my resume. If you want to start something, tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped.
Nobody cares about this dumb question.
Maximum fall. Lost investors, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer.
No one cares about your entrepreneurship.
So I remember lying on my floor, looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years, and eventually had some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating
I was an unhappy
how
lawyer
it feels
for
like your
5
friends,
whole months. Relatable.
No longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Yang.
You guys, we love you.
My biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. I, with a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back.
Machine
I had
on behalf of hedge funds in Manhattan.
Slashed, our campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped. It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're going to have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnab Penguins, for crying out loud.
How is this a setback,
The people in my
this
community living in the projects told me, don't give up on the people, and the people won't give up on you. Create bigger and bolder coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history. But more than that, the lesson was there. We didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty, and we transformed our city, creating tens of thousands of new jobs, the biggest economic expansion in our city, and as I said before, turned around our school system. There's more work to do, but I haven't given up on the people. I still live in that community. But this is the big lesson. My staff and my friends and my community told me, if you want to go fast, you may have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is about. There's an old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust people, because the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And the test of America right now, it's not a referendum on Donald Trump. It's a referendum on us and who we are and who we're going to be together. We need to use this moment in history to unite in common cause and common purpose, and then there's nothing we can't do together as a nation.
Senator Booker, thank you.
Somebody sweep this guy.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, George.
Get the comedian Klobuchar back involved.
Everything that I've learned about resilience, I've learned from my hometown of El Paso, Texas.
Fuck.
In the face of this
it's a dumb question. I mean, this whole question
is directed at our community in large part by the president.
I want to hear what my baby boy has to say.
And injured many more. We were not defeated by that, nor were we defined by that. The very thing that drew that killer to us is the very thing that helps us set the example for the rest of this country. We don't see our differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as foundational to our success, to our strength, and to our security, and to our safety. Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the Fusion. This is a girls' soccer team of 10 and 11-year-old girls. His name is Luis. He was shot in the legs multiple times. He was shot in the side multiple times. He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital bed, he's still trying to coach the Fusion girls soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital. Those two men, Jessica and Marcella, their wives, they exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge of gun violence in this country, when we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations and our ambitions, it will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman, thank you.
He gets an
Senator
A
Klobuchar.
for commodified feelings. Good job.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here.
I remember one time I said, you'll never fucking work in this town again. And that's a promise I kept to a staffer that put a comma in a memo I didn't like.
And treatment.
That
he chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family. And in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling. And our daughter. And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we were going to have this perfect birth. And she was really sick. And she couldn't swallow. And she was in and out of hospitals for 1.5 years. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care, and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislator, not an elected official, a mom, and I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the lobbyists 2-1. And when they said, when should it take place, they all raised their hand and said, now. That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when I got to that gridlock of Washington, D.C., and got to work and pass over 100 bills, and I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country. And someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from.
I think we need to
should have that same opportunity.
We need to protest ABC to have that whistle on the official record of the debate.
Thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know,
yeah, you're right.
Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side of San Antonio, going to the public schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And when I got home, I took a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year in the year 2000. A few months later, I got elected to the San Antonio City Council, and the City Council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client, and the client wanted those of us on the City Council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build a golf course over our water supply, because we relied on an underground aquifer. I didn't think the Environmental Protection Plan was strong enough, so I wanted to vote against it, and my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But under the ethics rules for lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers have ethics rules, you can't just go against the interests of the client. So I was stuck. On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm.
This question, when you did the same thing as
and then I went and I voted against that land deal on the city
Bernie
council.
is so annoyed that they spent this long on this question.
And
this is a really productive use of time.
It was the first test that I had, and I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests. There's nobody that gets tested more in a position of public trust than the President of the United States. This president has failed that test. But I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't. I won't serve anybody except you and your family. And together, we can create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Secretary Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd as well tonight. Thanks.
Well, that's cool.
Thanks to
all right. Well, they're better moderators in that sense.
Our coverage continues with Tom Llamas.
We learned that somebody at ABC News is friends with the Guaido family.
Yes, that's.
There's like, we need to get out of there before Biden gets another question.
Yeah. They're all trying to help Biden out.
My teeth were falling out, and then I had to get my chompers on again.
Kamala's got that like near at hand and barred out energy tonight. Like just zanned out, you know. Maybe she had a glass of Chardonnay or two as well.
Oh, Neera's back to tweeting, by the way.
Yeah. Percocet.
Oh, is she back?
She tweeted again. Didn't mention anything about the progress.
Not the. I don't know if we've had a debate that would change stuff any less than this one, frankly, which is a little bit disappointing. People were really anticipating a little more challenging.
We came out of the Mar-a-Lago summit with very high hopes.
Right.
We love you, Jane.
But we will talk more about this on tomorrow's program. And also some big proposals that have come out of the Senate today on the Democratic side, both Warren and Wyden. Not to be confused with Biden. Wyden coming out with
the Wario to his Mario.
Big expansions of Social Security, which, of course, I am very excited to talk about tomorrow. And we'll see. I mean, there was nothing that happened in this debate that will not continue the narrative, at least amongst sort of the media and, political junkies, that Joe Biden is like a half a unit away from being completely incomprehensible. And
what do you find so confusing about phonographs and regime change?
Well, I mean, look, it's not insane to say that we need to have kids have a greater listening vocabulary.
That's not the insane part. Yes.
That's not the answer to the question.
Right.
Where it becomes about we need. Basically, what I'm trying to say is black people really need to pick it up a little bit. And that's basically his response to. And it's.
Yeah, and wear a condom. God.
It's been pretty consistent probably over the past 40 years.
Vice President Biden, why did you form a close relationship with Strom Thurmond and other segregationists? I told Lakeem there's nothing wrong with wearing a rubber.
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we should wrap this up.
Well, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Folks, thanks for joining us. And listen, if you are an Amazon Prime, but we are not a partner with Twitch, but if you are an Amazon Prime member, I believe you can go in and basically take your Twitch shit and dedicate it to us this month. And you can do that every month. It helps support the show. Appreciate it. Join us tomorrow, majority.fm at noon. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you soon.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted in